Good morning, everyone. I grew up in a communal house, a place where people were constantly passing through. Creatives, outcasts, mystics, and devotees. I would have mature and deep conversations with all these people from a very young age, teaching me to expand my horizons, because everyone has something to teach. What I didn't like, however, was when they told me I was going to save the world. See, there came a point in every conversation when they'd bring up what a state the world was in, how impressive I was for my age, and how it was my generation's duty to save the world that they had just checked out from. I hated this. All it served to do was push me further into my room and my imaginary worlds, my favorite of which was a cabin in the woods far away. Now, put yourself in my shoes. You're at the end of high school. The only careers you're passionate about are infamously unreliable, crowded, and stressful. Everyone you talk to has a different idea for you, a different prescription of commitments and gambles. Life is confusing, and the future is scary. Then, the questions start coming. Will I ever live up to my potential? What even is my potential? Am I selfish for wanting to chase what makes me feel alive? Or would it be the only way to live? Shouldn't I be serving a greater cause, saving the world? What purpose should I even serve? There's so many. If I live my life dedicating time to my passions instead of serving others, will I be able to live with myself? Alternatively, if I spend my life serving others and neglect my passions, will I regret robbing the universe of my unique gift? I had so many questions, some more valid than others. What I really needed to do in that moment was slow down, realize where I was and who I was surrounded by. There were people like me. They'd all had these questions at one point, and through their own unique experiences, they'd come up with their own answers. They weren't squandering their lives. They'd lived fulfilled by their passions and by serving greater causes. They were the proof I needed that it was possible to do it all, and do it all in different ways. But how could I be capable of the same? If only I had the chance to ask them. It's my personal belief that the belief in my own unimportance has been the core of all my bad decisions. When you don't matter, your choices don't matter, and the consequences of your actions can't touch the things you care about, which also kind of shouldn't matter, but really they do. Hearing me describe this attitude, what words come to your mind? Grounded, realistic, practical? No, me neither. But getting out of this frame of mind couldn't have happened without the belief in my own importance. Now, I know what you're thinking. And I'm not up here today to say, I think I'm kind of a big deal. Rather, I'm important to myself in the same way a child is important to its parents. The parents are responsible not only for keeping the child safe, healthy, fed, and loved, but also for guiding the child towards opportunities for learning and growth. In a way, I became both parent and child to myself. Think about a time you made a mistake. You played it over and over in your head. You just beat yourself up for it. If your child made that same mistake, would you give them the same treatment? Would you question their worth, their future, what they deserve? Now, if any of you answered yes, please put your names on a list so I can avoid you. But really, I think there's more to it than treating myself like my own parent. What this journey has really been about is finding faith in myself. And Greenstone has tested this, as many other things have. But I believe through the process of self-inquiry over the past few months, I've learned and grown more than I ever have. But with all this talk about faith, what does it really mean? To answer that question, I'm going to first ask you the question, what does it not mean? What does it mean to not have faith in yourself? Now, as I'm the one with the microphone, I'm going to answer that question. When I have no faith in myself, I'm terrified. I don't trust myself to perform even basic tasks without assistance. I find myself falling into the same destructive patterns and habits. Habits which don't serve me because I crave their safety and familiarity over my own happiness. I live my life like a scared animal, lashing out, on edge all the time. I don't fully recognize the impact my state has on the people that care about me. I'm continually draining them. Throughout all of this, I'm constantly aware that I am a shell of who I could be, and I want so desperately to change, but I just don't trust myself enough to do it. That desire for change, I forget about it anytime a new opportunity for safety presents itself, which I cling onto like a lifeline, even as it destroys me. Now, that's a lot of words. With that in mind, what does having faith in yourself look like? When I have faith in myself, I find I gain energy from defying the part of myself that doubts. I believe that every choice I make, every action I take, every mistake I learn from is part of a very important story. It is important because I make it so, but I have to be careful. Because as the author of this story, I tell myself about my life. I control the details. And these details dictate what kind of person I am and what kind of life I lead. When I have faith in myself, I find I'm clearer in my mind. I find I'm uncomfortable in stagnation. I find that when I take risks, I can prove to myself that I've got my own back. And when I do that, I can view myself as someone who matters. This is super important, because when I view myself as someone who matters, I hold myself to the standard of someone who matters. Early on in the project, I found myself stuck. I didn't trust myself enough to see this thing through. I was reaching out for guidance everywhere I could find it, and I ended up leaning heavily on the experience of my dad and trusting it over my own. Not to put him on the spot, but he told me to figure out marketing, branding, a name, a logo, a jingle, before I even reached out to my first guest. His idea was to make it look like I knew what I was doing. I'm sure many of you can see the problem with this. I had no idea what I was doing. How could I figure any of this out without any experience under my belt? So I found myself stuck in a catch-22 for about a month. It all changed for me with a single conversation. I was sat with Guste at this very table around 8 p.m. We were the only people around. It was one of those rare, fantastic, delicious talks about life. I brought up the struggle I was going through. And what he told me, I believe, summarizes the entire core of my project. He told me to have faith in myself. In that instant, what it meant was standing up to my dad when I knew his advice clearly wasn't working for me. It meant going out and assuming the responsibility of my own choices, even in doing something for the first time, even if this thing was to be my legacy at Green School. Because ultimately, it was my own battle to fight. I felt a fire in my belly that I hadn't felt in such a long time. A fire to go out and try and fail. Guste taught me that the story of someone who has tried and failed is infinitely more valuable than the story of someone who just froze. Perseverance went from an obligation to a joy, and slowly, over time, I learned to trust myself. It all started with a leap of faith. To me, this leap meant baby steps into a kiddie pool, but they were my own baby steps. Daniel Barahona woke up one morning. He knew it was going to be a good day. It was his first time in Ubud. The birds were singing, the sun was shining. Little did he know, I'd sent him a message. Hello, Danny. This is Kavi. You're receiving this message because you're an amazing human being, and you really just inspire me, man. So let me explain. For my senior year Greenstone project, I'm making a podcast featuring the stories of successful creatives living life on their own terms. My target audience are young people, many of whom feel anxiety about their future and place in the world. It is my hope that exposing them to the stories of people like yourself will give them a greater sense of freedom and possibility. Well, Danny, what do you say, man? As it turned out, Danny had a lot to say.
So that day I took 4 shots of caffeine and then, let's say, 10 shots of alcohol. Very insane. And I really felt it. I got super drunk until next day I woke up and it was the lowest point of my life that made me think about my life, everything that I've done in my life so far. It was a huge day in my life. It was just, I realized that everything that I created in my life was out of this inner child that was hurt, that was wounded, and that just wanted his parents to love him because he didn't feel love.
Over the course of this conversation, Danny went from a friend to a brother. He taught me many things that he'd learned from his unusual upbringing, but more than that, he reminded me of deep truths that I had simply forgotten. From that point forward, I was nothing but excited to reach out to more guests and see what they had to say. However, not all episodes went as smoothly as this. One of my older guests was already drunk when I showed up. It was a challenge. I'll spare you the details, but it's safe to say we're still friends. Early the very next morning, I had another interview, this time with Jake McKenzie, best known for his role as ex-curator at Drifter Surf Shop and Cafe. It was night and day. Jake's Zen philosophy and genuine curiosity were exactly what I needed. Jake is one of those people I've always respected, but just been too scared to talk to. But he's actually a really chill guy. And he shared with me many gems about addiction, family, priorities, and of course, surfing. As you can see by now, some episodes just come out better than others. And often it's on me and my role as a host to bring out what's already there. And I know as a host, we're not supposed to have favorites, but by far, my favorite episode was my most recent, with Claude Gislan, translator for the Yawanawa people as they travel around the world. In our conversation, Claude shared with me a framework for finding your calling. It is comprehensive, actionable, and best of all, it applies to everyone. The first step is to identify your main limiting belief. In Claude's case, it was, I am not free. He spent years of his life and made huge decisions purely in rebellion against this belief. Relationships, projects, and just about any kind of commitment you can think of were out the window as soon as Claude felt they threatened his freedom. Step 2, replace the belief. But what takes its place? This method says inspiration. You can never be inauthentically inspired. Let me say that again. You can never be inauthentically inspired. Inspiration is a pure and honest reflection of who you are, and it can be a guiding and powerful force for your life. In Claude's case, he looked to moments from his childhood, moments he was lit up like a Christmas tree, watching other people come together. That was it. His new mantra condensed people coming together. Now, he would find himself in the same old arguments, feeling trapped, thinking, I've got to get out of here. But really, he was thinking, I am not free. I'm not free. He was declaring it to himself. But when he shifted his focus to his new mantra, people coming together, his whole energy would change. His demeanor, his posture, everything was so extreme that the other person would pick up on it and they would also change. Together, they would simply resolve the issue that had taken them so long to fix. This framework is life-changing. Operating from a place of inspiration rather than lack is life-changing. I'm really excited to see where it can take me into my future. Now, This is just a snippet of the episodes I've recorded and the lessons I've learned. These have been the most impactful for me, but who knows what I might have missed. If you want to listen to the podcast, it's available here on my Linktree, and I have a special Green School community exclusive preview of the episode with Claude through the SoundCloud link. It's at the top. Now, I'm eternally grateful for this special opportunity to have this kind of inquiry about my future and purpose at the age I am now. But it couldn't have happened without the Greenstone team, my teachers and mentors, by putting me through the framework of Greenstone, allowing me to have my midlife crisis at 18 instead of 45. Thank you. This whole thing would have taken a whole hell of a lot longer without the support of my parents, whose advice was always helpful, somehow even when it wasn't. I love you, thank you. And of course, I'm grateful for all my friends for always supporting me and having faith in me, even when I didn't have faith in myself. And for every conversation, recorded or not, that got me out of my own head. Everyone I've ever met has taught me something, and I hope that I can teach you something too. Thank you.